Hey everybody, welcome to Bad Relationship Advice. And we're doing a series right now. The series is The Path of the Organic Portal. And it came to our attention that many people might not know what an organic portal is. So it's loosely defined as a person that only lives in this world on a material level. They only experience material, physical things in this realm. Nothing, no spiritual stuff, no higher levels of consciousness, just material level. And so we're focusing on how different, what classically are called the deadly sins, how the organic portal actually experiences life through these different deadly sins. So last week we did lust, had a great discussion on that. And this week's topic of discussion is, we got Monica here to tell us.
Is envy.
Envy. Oh my gosh. So let's talk about some definitions of envy. Do you want me to read those?
Yes. Yes.
Great. Okay. So a couple different definitions. So it's an emotion you feel when you lack something else that somebody has that is perceived as superior. So it could be a quality, it could be an achievement, it could be a possession. And one thing about envy is that it's not only that you desire it and wish that you had this thing, but there can also, not necessarily, could also have an element of wishing that the other person did not have that quality, right?
Right. So there's two definitions. One is benign and one is more malicious.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And we'll get into those, what those look like down the road. But our good friend Aristotle from ancient Greece, he defined envy as pain at the sight of another's good fortune, stirred by what people who have what we think we ought to have. And it's also been said that envy is one of the most potent causes of unhappiness. And then that's where we start to get into what we were talking about earlier with the benign and the malicious. So you want to go into what those are?
So benign envy is when we look at something that we don't have and we want it. For example, I experienced benign envy earlier when I was looking at your orchids, and it made me envious because my orchids don't bloom the way yours do. My orchids don't even bloom, but it's benign in the sense that I am not wanting to destroy your orchids as a result, which would be malicious envy.
Right. The malicious envy means you want to go in there and take that thing away from the person so that they don't have it, because for whatever reason you can't stand the feelings of inferiority that you feel when you see other people, when you compare yourself to other people, and the net effect is you feel inferior, right?
Right.
Go ahead.
And I think it's interesting that you mentioned inferior, because we're most vulnerable to envy when we are unhappy and insecure.
Exactly. And what's happening now is that it used to be, before we had the technology that we have now, you might see things on TV or hear things on the radio or see things in a magazine that would make you envious. And in fact, I'd argue that basically all of marketing and advertising plugs into this natural human phenomenon of envy. But if you've got good people around you who value you as a person for who you are, not for the things that you possess.
And what you possess does not mean literally just material possessions. I think it's important to remember this. It's not about, so other things can include, for example, who you are versus your status, your salary, your job title, how you, all of those things are outside of your actual being. So your being
those
is not any of
material
those.
things, right?
Mhm. Yes, but also just in terms of things like status or, you know, the awards or whatever, right? I mean, yeah, it is material in some ways, I guess we could say, right? But but outside of that, this is not who we actually are. It's not what actually define us, but feeling like, but being told that this is sort of what defines us. So if you go through life and you're being rewarded for, or being told, well, you know, if you get these grades or if you get this job, then somehow you're going to be more valuable as a person, then that can create a sense of insecurity and unhappiness.
Right. If you're taught to value, or yeah, value a person based on the achievements that they've done or how good looking they are or how intelligent they are, I can see how that would lead to feeling stronger feelings of envy in your life, because those are the things that you value.
And those are the things that you think define who you are.
Right.
And so when we see someone that, for example, a person that is told that they are good looking and this is what gives them a lot of value, that's how they define themselves. When they see someone who is better looking, that might actually inspire this envy that can even be malicious, wishing ill towards that person, not
Sure.
being
Yeah, and let's bring in what I was getting to earlier, which is the idea of comparison. So comparison is what basically spawns envy, right?
right. And there was a study by Ethan Kross, who's a professor of psychology from University of Michigan, and he did a study where the participants would be passively scrolling through Facebook, and he noticed that when they engaged in this activity, their feelings of envy would go up and their feeling good would actually drop. So they felt worse by just the act of passively scrolling through Facebook.
Right. Seeing all those, what are we call Photoshop lifestyles on Facebook profiles actually makes us feel worse about ourselves. And I think something that was interesting was that I think you also read something, we were talking about something earlier where you can cognitively be aware that what you're seeing is not real and it will still give you feelings of envy.
Yes, because it's the thing of the Photoshop lives, because we know that on a cognitive, on a, you know, we know logically that a lot of this is people are showing kind of the best version of their lives and so on. And sometimes even their photos are photoshopped, right? So,
Right.
So what we're seeing is not reality. People are not going to show the boring or the other parts of their lives that they're not proud of. And yet it still inspires feelings of envy. And there's this even idea of self-envy. And so this is social psychologist that talked about self-envy, Sherry Turkle. And she was saying we can actually have feelings of envy towards this life that we have sort of created on social media that we actually don't measure up to in certain ways.
Like if you scroll through my, not my, but you know, my hypothetical Facebook page where I look fantastic in every picture, where I'm always happy, I'm always doing all this excited stuff, I actually will develop this weird sense of envy of this, basically this character of myself that I've created. I really can't understand how that would manifest, but I can totally see like, oh man, I wish I really was, like, I know the truth. I know that I'm not always doing this thing. I know that my life isn't this fantastic. So yeah,
And when it's,
make you feel worse.
Right. Yes. And because you're not doing at the moment your life, your actual life is not good enough.
Right.
So it's this other life that,
and going back to that topic of comparison, you know, it used to be you could compare yourself to the people that, you know, the kind of immediate people in your life. But now you can compare yourself to the entire world. We have countries comparing themselves to each other, you know, we have people comparing themselves cross-culturally, right? You have people, Chinese people comparing themselves to Americans, right? You have Americans comparing themselves to the Japanese. So this feeling of envy now, it can go so much further because we have so much more to compare ourselves to, which also the dark side of it is we can make, it can make us feel that much worse about ourselves if we let it.
Yes.
And so
Yes,
just
so-
tying it to the organic portal really quick, organic portals are not going to be, they're not going to ask themselves, am I feeling envious right now? Is this feeling of envy warranted? You know, they're not going to, they're just going to be motivated by it. You know, it's going to motivate them either positively, right? There could be positive consequences from having envy. You could be motivated to get a better body. You could be motivated to get a better job, make more money. You could be motivated to get Botox, or it could be a malicious envy where you want to take everybody around you down. Like if you can't have it, you don't want anybody to have it. But still,
Right.
the organic portal is only operating on that level. Envy, they're going to experience envy and they're going to act on it some way, right? Whereas I think the next segment is we're going to talk about some things that are going to help you recognize envy and also manage it.
Right. And I think also the other thing to mention is like when we actually are triggering envy in others. And so sometimes what we should ask ourselves, so if we go on social media and so on, or we talk about ourselves or whatnot, right? Asking maybe ourselves and trying to be honest, like, why are we doing it? Why are we posting? Why are we talking about these things?
Right. Are we feeling a sense of pleasure from provoking envy in others? I think, yeah, that's still in the realm of envy. That's working on that level. I get pleasure. Getting pleasure from your envy is kind of a form of it's on the malicious side, right? Like,
and it's linked to vanity also, right? It's constantly kind of trying to show that we are somehow better because we lead better lives or we have a better title or salary or whatever. So we can also trigger that envy. And I think and now more than ever with social media, which we talked about earlier, it's that much more. There's an explosion of envy because everything is taken on a much higher magnitude than just sort of, looking at your neighbor. Now it's
stakes are way higher now.
Yes.
We can see people's houses. We can see how much they make. We can see their collection of cars. We can see all the beautiful people they hang out with. And we get carried away and forget, like, are these people actually having real, functioning, fulfilling human relationships from all this stuff? Doubtful.
Right. So that's another thing to think about is what we're actually envying. And is it something we, first of all, actually want?
Right.
And do we not already have enough? Are we not already good enough? And we have enough. And so that's this idea also of having gratitude, but like, being grateful for what we have. So rather than the lack, but more going through life with understanding, leading fulfilled lives to make us happier and to have better relationships and with others, and taking the time to hone these relationships, and also thinking about, okay, for example, if we're envious on someone who has lots of money, are we willing to work the 70 hours a week or whatever that it takes in order to make all of this money?
Right.
Is this really an envious position? And are we actually going to be happier? What is the money going to buy us that we can't already sort of get? Because I would say most of the really worthwhile things actually are free anyway.
Yeah, it's true. You can't buy good friends. You can't buy good relationships with others. You can't buy a hobby that's truly fulfilling. I mean, money can help make things happen, but money in itself, we all want.
You can go to a wonderful luxurious restaurant, but if the person that you're with is not interesting,
Right.
then you're going to have a better time having a picnic somewhere with your best friend
Right.
who you love talking to than at this fancy restaurant where this person that has nothing interesting to talk about, or just so.
Right. Awkward or weird or yeah. So we talked about how the classic virtues can actually serve as ways to manage feelings of envy. And you were mentioning earlier how the lack of, what is it when you don't, it's an intolerance for
Yes. So another cognitive behavior therapist, Wendy Dryden, talked about low self-esteem and deprivation intolerance, which is not being able to bear not getting what you want.
right. And it could just be a temporary thing. Like, I mean, how many people do you know that, like, if they can't get what they want right now, they become angry, right? They break down in some way.
Well, we live in the instant gratification culture.
Exactly. So there probably are lots of people that really don't experience a whole lot of that tolerance. What's it called?
Deprivation intolerance.
Yeah, like deprivation tolerance would be the good quality. Deprivation
right.
is going to be. So in terms of our classic virtues, patience obviously is a huge one. Just because you can't have it now doesn't mean you can't have it in the future. If you're willing to, and this is our second virtue, diligence. If you're willing to work for it, be persistent, put effort into it. It's true. I'm never going to have a spaceship like Jeff Bezos, but I'm okay with that. Like, I accept it. I'm not going to have that. I can still hold on to the thought that maybe one day I'm going to run into Jeff Bezos' cousin and I'm going to get an invitation to spaceship. But again, like I can look at that and say, man, it's awesome that people now can go into space on their own private spaceship. Man, that's awesome, and kind of, but, and if I feel feelings of envy, there's nothing to be ashamed of. It's very human. It's very normal. You're going to feel.
And also asking yourself, well, what is it about going on into space? Well, besides the like awesomeness, I guess, of going into space, right? But also the thing of, okay, are you interested in space? Is there something that you would like to learn more about? Can you actually read or watch videos or get into like the space community somehow where you can change ideas?
Find a group of people that do get together with telescopes, an astronomy club. Or if you want to take it seriouser, sorry, if you're younger and you want to study space, go into a new field of study. I mean, it's not like a black and white, either you have it or you don't. There's a lot of things you can do to satisfy those desires that are actually more fulfilling than just kind of self-destructively being like, oh man, he's, what's it called? Diminishing, when you diminish others in order to protect your own feelings.
Oh.
It's like, I hope it blows up, or he didn't even earn that. Well, he tried to be an astronaut and they said he couldn't be one. And it's just like kind of dwelling in the negative and trying to say
toxic.
Yeah, exactly. Toxic. And it's toxic to yourself, instead of acknowledging. And the healthier thing to do is just say, yeah, I do feel envious. That would be awesome. I wish I could do that. What else could I do?
Right.
Use it to motivate you to do something to better your own life, instead of poo-pooing somebody else who you perceive to have a better life than you. But I mean, I don't have Jeff Bezos' number. I don't know Jeff Bezos. I don't know what the problems are in his life. All I know is if I had $1.5 billion in my bank account, what would I do? I think it would be great, but I really don't know. So yeah, patience, diligence, obviously kindness. If you're thinking malicious thoughts about how you hope somebody has a wreck in that nice car that they have, that's not particularly kind. And again,
well, and it's not very charitable either,
right,
because charity is also about goodwill, wishing people goodwill.
exactly. Wishing people the best, even if maybe they weren't kind to you. That doesn't mean you turn around and poison yourself and drink your own poison of thinking toxic thoughts about somebody else or hoping that something bad happens to them. It's just coming back on you.
When I think it's also good to be aware of how we are feeling at the moment. So if we are feeling this malicious envy towards someone, we don't wish them good, and trying to literally replace that, even if we have to force ourselves for a minute, with a feeling of goodwill, and see how we feel when we have goodwill towards someone, versus this sort of malicious envy. How does that make us feel?
There's actually a meditation exercise where you kind of go and take some breaths, get into that state, and then you actually visualize a person that you've had difficulty with in your life. You visualize them, and you visualize them completely with sunlight shining on them, and you visualize them with an expression of pure happiness on their face. And it is an extremely transformative exercise, because when we think of people that have wronged us, people that we're angry at, people that we feel are terrible people, the last thing we want to do is imagine them happy, right? But it's an amazing exercise to really focus on that person experiencing pure joy and what they would look like and being completely irradiated by sunlight. It's a really interesting exercise. It's not easy, and they actually suggest you try with somebody who you don't have that, that maybe they cut
you kind of don't like.
Yeah, exactly. They cut in front of you in line or something, not somebody who did something really horrible to you. You kind of have to work your way up to that. But yeah, that awareness that those negative feelings are in you is actually going to help you manage them, just being aware of them.
Have you tried it?
I have. And I tried it with my aunt, who is always stirring up trouble in our family. But it worked. Like suddenly the negativity that I felt towards this person, I was so focused on visualizing them as happy and experiencing real happiness, because you can kind of see that on a person's face too, when they're truly feeling happy versus, he didn't get what he wanted. That kind of happy, that's not happiness. So it really does. It completely transforms that negativity in yourself, because if you see, I would like to think that if you see somebody, no matter what horrible things they've done, if you see them in a state of pure joy, you can appreciate it. That's as far as I can take it, but I think you can appreciate it, and it's good for you.
Yes, it's your heart attack, as
I've
heard being said, right? It's all of this negativity and toxicity and so on. We actually we drink the poison. By the way, another podcast on this, if you for anyone who hasn't heard it, don't drink the poison. And yes, and that's also very damaging to us, to our health.
Absolutely. And then you spread that negativity to others, and it becomes a whole thing.
Yes.
All right. Anything else on envy?
I think we're done.
Okay, great. Thanks for joining us. Our next episode, it'll be another in the series of the Path of the Organic Portal. I think we're going to either hit gluttony. I think it might be gluttony. I think so.
Oh, yes. I thought it. Okay.
We're going to do gluttony.
All right.
We
We'll
got,
do gluttony.
I think we got 4.
I guess we have to do gluttony now that you
We
mentioned
have to do it. I just called it. Okay.
All
Monica, thank you. And thank you guys
Thank you,
for
Damien.
listening. And if you have any advice or experiences with envy that you'd like to share, please do so. We'll see you next time right here on Bad Relationship Advice. I'm Damien.
And I'm Monica.
Okay, bye.